We are joined on this episode by a director whose resume includes killer films, including May, The Woman, Kindred Spirits, and All Cheerleaders Die. His latest feature, Old Man, a Paper Street Pictures production starring the great Stephen Lang, is in theaters and on VOD as of October 14th, 2022. He is Lucky McKee. Lucky, thank you so much for joining us on the program here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you on. I've been a big fan since May, really. So I feel very lucky to be able to talk to you today. No pun intended. Sorry.
you mean you've been a fan since just May of 2022, right?
Yes, that's what I meant. Exactly.
No, that's cool. I'm amazed that just saw that Shudder put May up over the weekend, and just, man, there's still a lot of love for that movie. It makes me really happy. It seems like it's literally a lifetime ago that I made.
We were about to say the same thing, that maybe a new audience will also discover it via Shudder now.
Yeah, it's been 20 years. Can you believe it? Makes me feel old.
Making us all feel old. So let's make you feel even older by going way back in time. We usually start off by asking, what gave you the bug? Like, how'd you get interested in storytelling and writing and in movies? Was it from like a comic book or?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it hit me pretty early. Movies were always a really, really special thing to me as a child because we lived in a very rural area. There was nothing, no movies, no gas station, nothing around us. Grew up in the sticks. So when we did get to go to the movies, it was maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. So it was like a religious experience to me. To get to see a movie it was the equivalent of going to Disneyland for a lot of kids. It was a really special thing. But obviously I didn't have a lot of access to that stuff because I lived in a really, really rural setting. And I got into comic books kind of in the middle of elementary school, and became enamored with those, and started to try to write my own stories and draw my own comics, and tried to teach myself how to draw and everything. And eventually realized I didn't have a gift for drawing. Like, I could see some other kids around me. And around the time I hit, but I still love comic books, and I still love that visual storytelling aspect. And by the time I got into, I think about 7th grade, I met a kid that had one of those old video cameras, the ones where you actually had to carry a VCR around with you. That tells you a little bit about my age. But I mean, even then, that was an old device. But we made our first short film. We made a Nightmare on Elm Street knockoff. And after that, I just decided this is what I want to do. I want to make movies. I was 11 years old, I think. And I worked at a horse ranch that summer and shoveled horse shit and fed racehorses for an entire summer, and bought my first video camera with that, a Panasonic OmniVision VHS camera. And I've been making movies ever since.
I want to know a little bit more about this Nightmare on Elm Street knockoff.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing. Like, this friend also kind of opened up the world of horror to me too. He was one of those kids that, you see in all the nostalgia driven stuff now, that, the kid with all the cool horror poster, like the Squirm poster on his wall, and just all the Fangoria magazines and all that kind of stuff. I met this kid and we really hit it off, and I just got kind of thrown into that world. So, when we decided to make our own movie, Freddy was my favorite character. I discovered Nightmare on Elm Street within a couple years of that, and become really enamored with horror and that whole subconscious aspect of those movies, the dream logic, the idea of like filming people's dreams and going in and out of dreams and everything. I thought was really fascinating even at a young age. So I was obsessed with Freddy. I had the 6-foot door poster of Freddy and everything when I was that age. And we just decided to make our own, and we got some latex and made some Freddy makeup that we put on my face, and shot this thing in my friend's backyard. And it was just such a blast, just such a blast. So I'm sure I have that VHS lying around somewhere. I haven't seen it in years and years, but God, that'd be hilarious to dig up at this point.
Nice. Dream Logic, my favorite Nightmare sequel personally. But I love that you shout out Squirm of all movies.
Yeah, well, I just remember that poster. It had such a fantastic poster with the skull, with the bugs coming out of it, or the snake coming out of it, whatever it was.
Right.
Yeah, it just made a real impression on a young boy from the sticks.
Well, that certainly set you on the path. So you ended up attending the film program at USC, excuse me.
Yeah, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I cut my teeth, street brawls. I went to USC Film School. I wasn't in the production school. I was in the filmmaker writing program, which is basically their undergrad fine arts screenwriting program. And that's where I wrote my first screenplays. I wrote May, my junior year at USC. And that's also where I said build my first relationships in the business. Were my peers at that school. I think that the biggest value I got out of USC, besides it being one of the better film schools in the world, was just the kids that I met that were like-minded. I didn't have kids like that. I didn't grow up with kids like that. So it was really neat to, meet all these kids and I met Ryan Johnson there and cinematographer Steve Yedlin, who shot May for me and has gone on to shoot all of Ryan's movies, and Chris Sievertson, who I ended up making All Cheerleaders Die with, and this guy Todd Summitavia, and this girl John Luckett, who did the score for all of my movies, and Zach Passero, who still edits all of my movies. And we're all still really, really tight friends, and we still help each other out on each other's projects, big and small, So that was the real value of going to film school, was just all of these lifelong friends that I made that I continue to work with. Sure. Even our DP on Old Man, I met him through Steve Yedlin on a short film that Steve was gaffing for him, and I worked as an electrician on that. So, I was lugging cable and lights and stuff like that around for Alex. And then, years later, he shoots 3 features for me.
You mentioned you wrote May during college. Was that, we'll bounce around a little bit to your filmography here, but when you were writing that, was your intention to always be the director of it as well? Or were you thinking, just let me sell this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was in the screenwriting program, but my number one goal was always to be a director. And we, in that program, we had classes where we made short films. May's original incarnation actually was a short film I made for was shooting on High 8 video at the time. I shot this little short over a weekend called Fraction, starring John Luckett as the May character, who ended up being the May character. And she, like I said, she ended up doing all the music for my first several movies. I made this little movie called Fraction, and it was about this lonely girl that was having trouble with connecting with people. And then she ultimately, takes her favorite piece of each of those person and constructs a friend out of them. So I made that short, and it was one of those things where it's like you have an assignment, you put it off all week long. And then, the weekend hits, your class is on Monday, and you got to come up with something. You got to film it. You got to cut it together. You got to do all this stuff. So it was one of those last minute ideas that just kind of flooded out of me. I wrote down a little outline and drew some little storyboards, and I went and shot the thing. And I stayed up all night the night before class and edited it together and put music on it and stuff like that. And then showed it to my class. And that was kind of my final project that semester. And it really, really went over well. And I was like, you know what, this is a really juicy idea. And it taps into the themes of loneliness. And my favorite film at that time was Taxi Driver. So there's a heavy influence from Taxi Driver there. And I was like, okay, this could be like my Taxi Driver, my little statement about loneliness. And ultimately looking back on it now, years later, obviously it's very much about the angst I was going through and the social awkwardness I was going through as like a nerdy teenager. And even into my early 20s, that film kind of is a big expression of a lot of things I was going through emotionally, obviously all fiction, but it's all jumping off of very real feelings I was having at the time. And any good movie or artistic endeavor, it was one of those things that ended up fixing things in me and it helped me get past some of my hangups. And it really, really led to great things, just by kind of with that story, just saying I feel alone and I feel like an outcast, and a lot of people identified with that, and like I said, thankfully few people anyway, still remember that movie. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And interestingly, after you graduated, your first feature was not May. You ended up making the ultra low budget All Cheerleaders Die and shot over a couple of long weekends. So kind of what lessons did you end up learning, from that experience that you would take on with you to your later filmography?
Honestly, all of them. That was a situation where Chris and we were about a year out from graduating film school, and we realized nobody's just going to give us a chance to make a movie. We got to go out and make it happen on our own. We talked our parents out of about, I think initially $5,000 each, and just started making this thing. I think ultimately the whole thing probably ended up costing $15,000 or something like that, when you factor in the computer we had to buy and everything to edit it. But Chris and I did everything. We wrote the script together. We directed it together. When I was operating the camera, he was holding the boom. we literally did every job that you're supposed to do, just the two of us. And by co-directing a film, which I actually highly recommend, if you have somebody that you have a really strong creative bond like that, it's a really great way to make a first movie because you're learning twice as much. You're learning from each other's discoveries. You're learning from each other's mistakes. And there's just this, we just learned so much, and like not too long after that, I got the chance to make May. And I don't think I would have been as competent, even at a young age. I think I would have been a lot less competent making my first film if I hadn't have gone through that experience of shooting something like, and shot lots of shorts and everything, but like shooting something long form is a different thing. There's a lot of lessons to it, and it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So pretty much most of the most important things that I've learned about making movies were just saying, screw it. Let's just go make a movie with what we have at our disposal, which wasn't much. And it gave us a lot of confidence. It's like, yes, we know how to make something from beginning to end and finish it. And it's a story that makes sense and it's fun and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of lessons learned on that. And it also wasn't like something ultra precious, like emotional, personal piece. It was like a fun, kind of our fun take on a zombie witchcraft high school sort of a thing. It was more just like trying to make something that people want to eat popcorn and watch.
Yeah. And I was going to say, I think going through that sort of experience also, you just learn so much appreciation for all the work that goes into a full feature film, right? That marathon and understanding all the roles and their value. And then kind of fast forwarding with May, had a bigger budget. I'm sure it was not huge, but that's now obviously, as we talked about, a beloved indie horror classic, and you got to work with actors who are now like much more recognizable maybe even than they were at the time, like Angela Bettis, Anna Faris, Jeremy Sisto, who all deliver amazing performances. When you were on set making that, did you feel like you were making something special, kind of like how like the short film just sort of was like clicking for you, or did that realization come later, after the rush?
No, it feel, I guess, I don't know. It's kind of a dangerous question because it would make me sound kind of arrogant, but yeah, I mean, of course it was special. I was getting to express very, very personal feelings on somebody else's dime, and pretty much got to make the movie that I really wanted to make. Obviously I was a first-time filmmaker, so I had my back and forths with the producers, who ultimately did a good job. We had our differences at certain points, but ultimately the movie came out good, and it came out representative of those feelings that I had at that time. And it was it's a very emotional thing to make a personal film because you're so close to it, and you can get really precious about things, and that's a fuel, and that's a spark for everybody else that's working around you, because they know that you're not just a hack, they know that you're not just getting it in the can and moving on to the next gig, that this is something that like really, really means a lot. There's been a lot of deep thought behind it, and every color that we use and the wardrobe and the props, everything is very, very important and precious. Was very important and precious to me as I was making it, and there was, I'd been through some really rough personal things, about a year before that, I lost somebody very, very dear to me, who watched them pass away. And those feelings and that the pain of that all kind of like really, really kind of culminated in the end of the film, and where she cuts her eye out and she's just completely distraught. It's in like full tragedy mode at that point at the end of the film. And when Angela was performing that, and I was kind of giving her personal feelings that I'd had and asking her to kind of replicate, in a dramatic way, these feelings that I had buried deep inside me, it got really, really overwhelming at a certain point. I just completely fucking broke down while we were shooting the end of that movie, and had to like walk away for like a good like 15, 20 minutes just sobbing, because it brought up so much personal stuff, and she was capturing it in such a beautiful way, that I was like, at the same time, I was in a lot of pain because of what I was showing. And I was wondering, why am I doing this to myself? Showing this? Why am I exposing this? But at the same time, also like incredibly moved that Angela would be the vessel for me to express that stuff. I feel indebted to her. I'll feel indebted to her for the rest of my life for helping me get that stuff out. it's a very, very, very emotional experience, So yes, to answer your question, it felt very special. I didn't know if anybody was going to want to watch it or if people would get the sense of humor behind it or the weirdness to it. But, that's what the movie's about. It's just a weird little movie made by a weird dude, so.
No, all of it translates, and I think the proof was in the pudding that afterwards, not only are folks still discovering, as we talked about, but following May, you had the opportunity to direct Masters of Horror episode, work with Horror Royalty, Bruce Campbell on The Woods. How crazy was just that time in your life afterwards when it was well received?
It was pretty wild, going from making a little, I think May cost like $350,000, $400,000 to all of a sudden book a director for hire gig, making a movie for United Artists and MGM, was definitely skipping some major grades in school. I was still really young when I got hired for that job. When that job kicked in, I was still, I think, 26 or 27 years old. So it was pretty overwhelming. But I just tried to keep reminding myself that, all that matters is what ends up in front of the lens, and all that matters is that you give a shit about what you're working on, and that you impart that on other people. So yeah, it was very surreal, and making The Woods was really surreal, and it was neat to be able to have a budget where you could hire Bruce Campbell and you could hire Patricia Clarkson and you could work at that level. I mean, even more so where you get into the I had to pinch myself sort of situation. Yeah. I mean, Masters of Horror was I cannot believe that I am making an episode of the first season of this show and standing shoulder to shoulder with all these guys who inspired me to do this stuff. By that time, Toby Hooper had become a very dear friend to me and a hell of a mentor. He had given me so much good advice as I was starting out and was always there for me when I was making The Woods and going through working with the studio for the first time and the politics and dynamics of that sort of thing, because he'd been through every situation you can imagine. And he was just really, really helpful. For the rest of his life, he was really, really helpful to me in that regard. But Masters of Horror was one of those situations, I think even more so than The Woods, where I was like, I have to be on my best fucking behavior. I have to have my shit completely together. I went up there, I think a week or two early just to make sure I was extra prepped. And so I could see the other directors working and just learn the game. I'd never done television before. And you had to work really fast on that show. You had 10 days to shoot an hour, so I didn't want to be the kid that comes in that they take a shot on that derails this great thing they have going on. So I made really, really sure that we were making our days. A lot of days we wrapped early and we're pushing stuff up on the schedule and just made sure that I was just on my best behavior making that thing. And it was, what a neat thing to have on the shelf working on that show. It was really special. I was sad that it didn't last very long. Really feel like it could even come back at some point because it was just such a great idea on Mick's part to put all that together.
I mean, still
seems... another season of Masters of Horror.
Yeah,
I think we all are. Yeah. And that's this idea of these 1 hour original films. It's just so cool. And they gave. I had the same set of parameters the rest of the directors had, which is once the script was approved, the thing just has to clock in an hour or a little bit less, and you're making your movie. I didn't have any notes on my cut or anything. They let me rewrite the script that I picked that they presented to me and let me rewrite it. The original script was the lead was actually a man, and I really wanted to obviously work with Angela again, so they let me rewrite it. As opposed to a man and a woman going through this weird romantic dance that I made it about these two women just because Angela was my lead, in my mind at that point. So I got to rewrite it and kind of give it some of the flavor and humor that was just more personal to me. And, all the way through to the final mix, I just got to make the thing I wanted to make. It was amazing. But to have that gift at that age was pretty amazing.
Right. Fast forwarding
really fortunate
a little bit to, I think I can say one of your more divisive films, The Woman. Besides being a collaboration with Jack Ketchum, the film actually gained a little notoriety due to the intense reaction that audiences had on the festival circuit. So I guess the question I have for you is, do you think audiences today would respond the same way they did in 2011 around that time?
I'd probably be even more extreme. I think people are even more sensitive now about what you can and can't do in a movie than they ever have been beyond, in my lifetime anyway. I think things have gotten really conservative and there's this real wave of people that can't distinguish between what an artist is telling a story about and what that artist's personal beliefs are. And I think the reaction would be much stronger, and there'd be a lot more anger and venom in the air about it nowadays.
Yeah, if you don't believe Lucky, look up the Blonde Discourse on Twitter.
Oh boy. Yeah. I haven't seen that one yet. I heard it's pretty intense, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't be allowed to explore things in stories. That's dangerous when you're telling people what they can and can't do in a creative space.
Yeah, that leads to kind of my next question for you, is a bit more philosophical. Like, are you still finding yourself, having to defend your work? And do you think that's a responsibility artists should have? I mean, it sounds like maybe not, or at least being able to kind of intellectually separate the art from the person. The freedom to explore is important, but where does the responsibility lie within an artist or a filmmaker?
Just your own internal moral gauge. It's not on me to tell other people what they can and can't do, even though that seems to be another thing that people are there's a wide section of people that think that that's okay. I think that's really dangerous to tell other people how to live their lives. Obviously within reason, can't be running around killing each other or hurting each other, as long as people aren't hurting each other. I think artists should be able to do their thing. For me, I think that I got out a lot of anger and I got a lot of anger out with that film, and it's a very, very nasty movie and mean movie, which was the way I was feeling at that time. I wasn't being an abusive person, but I was just, the world was really ugly to me, and I wanted to reflect that ugliness, that happens between people, and how a person can have their thumb over somebody and be leveraging them to get their own kind of sick satisfaction out of it, which just disgusts me. And I'd had enough experience in Hollywood to see those kind of behaviors in various forms, that movie was very much, I'd been kicked a lot. So that movie had a lot of anger in it. But again, like I said, with May, it got a lot of that stuff out, and I moved on. And I don't know that I will ever go that dark again, because it's also really taxing to live in that mental space, making something like that, writing the script and then prepping it, and then asking actors to perform the things I had to ask actors to perform, and trying as hard as possible to stay true to the idea, and then living with it in the edit, and then going on the film festival circuit for a year after that, where you're talking about this really, really dark, sad, mean stuff. It really, really I was pretty spent after that whole experience. So then I turned the corner and we made All Cheerleaders Die, which was something that was a little bit, it has its darkness too, but it was way more on the bubblegum side. And I needed to do something lighter and make something with a friend and just have fun, So yeah, and I don't think I would make The Woman now at the age I am now and the person I am now. I'm a dad now and I've got a kid, and I'm just a lot more sensitive, just a lot more sensitive to stuff. It's like the reason I haven't watched Blonde yet is because, I keep hearing people talk about how brutal it is and how, and good friends are telling me unnecessarily brutal it is. And it's like, I don't know if I want to put myself through that tonight. So we all change as we go along, but as far as who's, I don't know if I'm really answering your question.
No, but you're segueing perfectly in that you're admitting you're an old man who's less angsty. So we'll talk a little bit about.
I know.
No, you're aging correctly by being less angsty in your older age. It's supposed to grow a little more compassion.
I hope so. Well, I think the thing that I've observed about aging and getting older is that, I'm seeing my parents' generation throw their little tantrums by electing someone like Trump and doubling down on the kind of stuff they're doubling down on now. And I'm seeing that boomer generation, who were also these wonderful activists and people really fighting for important things back in the day. And now they've kind of become Darth Vader, and just, I'm seeing that as certain people, as the majority of people get older, their view of the world and their view of what works and what doesn't work in the world just gets into this really narrow lane. And my goal as I get older is to become more open and to just open up and not narrow down in my views of the world and how things can be and should be. And that goes with movies. It's like there's a lot of movies I'm watching now silent films, a lot of films from the 30s and films from all different types of films. I'm trying to expand my knowledge of film and expand my love of film as opposed to saying, I only like this kind of movie. I only like action movies. I only like horror movies. I only like, Oscar movies or whatever. It's like, I'm trying to like always make sure that I'm like sampling a little bit of everything that's out there. So my love for movies gets bigger, not smaller and narrower, if that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. It's out there and more readily available now more than ever. And it's now watched by less people more than ever. Very depressing. It's willful ignorance, I think, at this point, because it's all there. I mean, HBO Max alone has like a Turner Classic Library that bests almost every streaming service.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
Old movies, you can find them.
Yeah, the stuff that young people, the stuff that all of us have access to now is just unbelievable. I mean, like just getting my hands on like a beautiful 4K restoration of Lucio Fulci's New York Ripper is like, I can't believe this thing exists. When I first saw that movie, it was a bootleg VHS of a Japanese Laserdisc that I bought out of some like sketchy catalog back in the 90s, and now it's like I have what is the equivalent of a print of this like crazy grindhouse movie that this guy made. It's awesome, man. Like, and with streaming, it's just pick a streaming service. I mean, Amazon Prime alone, you can really, really get a hell of an education in film just going through their library. And and HBO, it's insane. It's like you go down their all movies lists and it's just every row has a fucking classic on it. There's just so much to be absorbed there. And I hope people are taking advantage of that. It's a real privilege to have access to all that these days.
100%. And shout out to the people doing the Lord's work that are restoring like these old grindhouse movies and stuff that you can't
it's so awesome.
Yeah. Severin, Vinegar Syndrome.
Yes.
Shout Factory, Scream Factory. Like it's amazing. The stuff that you can get now where, movies I was searching for my whole life. And now it's like, wait, I can get that on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a box.
I'm looking at I'm sitting next to my little movie library here, and that Thriller, A Cruel Picture, is sitting there. This beautiful box set that Vinegar Syndrome put out, and it's just like, holy shit! I can't believe how good the movie looks, and just that movie is sitting on my shelf in legitimate form. It's just incredible.
Shout out to former guest of the show, Brad Henderson, who does that very same Lord's work for Vinegar Syndrome.
The Lord's work, yes, that's the best way.
I don't know why Sex World is out in 4K, but I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, exactly. This is great, man. This is all history, and that's the great thing about old films too, is that even if a film was bad in its time or not that good, all films age like wine because they're time capsules. You can go back and look at a movie that was shot on 42nd Street, New York in the late 70s, early 80s, and you can it puts you back, and it's a form of time travel that is just beautiful. Every movie gets better with time, I think. And that's, we're living in a great age to be able to kind of root through all this stuff. It's kind of overwhelming at certain points because it's like, there's no fucking way I'm ever going to be able to see everything, but I'm going to try,
I would only take umbrage with every movie because there is that little window of just terribly rapey 80s sex comedies. Revenge of the Nerds. Totally. Revenge of the Nerds is almost impossible to show somebody.
Oh, yeah. Not everything ages well, but I just mean just in terms of like the,
I know
how it was filmed, where it was filmed, cultural, where, and those films are important because that was considered, those films were considered okay at a certain point, and they're measurements for how we've evolved, so it's like all of that stuff is important.
There's only
so much offensive shit just in 30 studio films.
Exactly.
With people of color and with women and everything, but those are representative of what people thought was acceptable at that time. And that's fascinating to me. I think if you start erasing that stuff, that's really bad because it's just going to happen all over again.
No, fully agree. I had a segue for Old Man. That was like 2 hours ago. But because
it had something to do with me being an old man.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
So
I got to work with Stephen Lang. It was amazing.
Yes, you did. We'll get to him for sure. Well, the origin of it, as I understand it, is that Mark Center, the actor who plays opposite Mr. Lang, first read a play of the story from writer Joel Veitch and convinced him to adapt it into a screenplay. Yeah. And that he came to you first with it once that was done.
He did. Mark and I have known each other since a film I produced back in the 2004, 2005 era. It came out in 2006, I think, called The Lost. It was the first Jack Ketchum book to get adapted into a film. Not the first one released, but the first one to get made. And Mark was the lead in that. And we've been buddies ever since. And we've always wanted to work on something together. We just, just never quite found the right thing. We did do a segment in Tales of Halloween together. That was the first thing I directed him in. But that was just a tiny little thing. We shot that in a few days, and, it was a short and sweet little experience. But over the years, Mark had gotten into the producing game, because he's like, look, it's like, if I'm not getting the parts I want, maybe I can generate them, and this was an example of that. His buddy wrote an interesting play. He brought that to me. I mean, I got it. It was in screenplay form, but it was still a play. It was very much just two guys in a room talking a lot of expositional dialogue. And once we started to get it on the rails as a film to make, Aaron and Paper Street came on board, and things started to become a real boy, so to speak, in Pinocchio terms. Then Joel and I sat down, and I never touched the script. It's all Joel, that script. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece of writing. He's a real great ear for dialogue, and a very great ear for a dialogue that is especially rings in my ears, because I was raised in the country, and my grandfather lives in a cabin in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, and all of these things that I had personal connection to it, even though he had written it. And we took about a month before pre-production started, and we just went through every inch of the script and tried to bring it into more of a cinematic space. And it's still very much a two-hander. It's still very much the one location, two guys and everything, but we did everything we could to make it visually expressive as well. And like I said, take it into that cinematic space. So it was just a wonderful experience. And I think that Joel and I were both very nervous to work with each other at first. I think he was probably worried I was going to come in and just wreck his script, because the script obviously meant a lot to him, because it started with him. But I'm very respectful of that, as a writer myself. So we found a really good groove really early on. And then it was just like, it was a blast getting the script ready for the shoot. And then, once a guy like Stephen Lang comes on board, and finally my opportunity to give Mark a leading role was just, it was just a wonderful experience. And one thing that really got us through the shoot is the fact that our actors were so good and so rooted in theater, and they knew how to memorize an entire script, not just their sides that day. These guys, I could take them on the set. And we had 15 days to shoot this movie, which is a very, very tight schedule. This is the kind of movie that you can achieve in 15 days because it is one location. It doesn't have a lot of complex logistics and stuff like that. But, you still have to shoot a lot of freaking pages every day. These guys were so well rehearsed and so plugged into what they were doing that I could shoot 10 minutes of these guys acting uninterrupted. It was incredible to watch Stephen Lang do a 12-minute run, and to catch that with a camera, and then Mark being right there with him. And, we're not stopping halfway through. There's very rarely did we stop halfway through a take and go, oh, we fucked that up. Let's start over again. I mean, these guys were doing take after take, and it got exhausting after a certain point, because, we were shooting single camera. We didn't have two cameras. I've learned the virtues of that since doing some television work. But we only had one, so it was single camera, and it was like, okay, we're shooting Slang, do a 12-minute run, and then we turn around and we do Mark's side of that 12-minute run, and it would get pretty exhausting for those guys. By the end of it, are we fucking done with this scene yet? Stephen Lang is a class A ball buster, in the best possible way. So there was a lot of joking, kidding around about that, but we knew we were catching something special, and we all knew it was worth it. But I had the previous two films I had made, I'd had kind of some not the best experiences with certain actors, and this movie and Paper Street and Aaron and Mark as producers all gave me the kind of creative room. They gave me a lot of room to do my thing. They let me make the movie that I wanted to make. They let me make the important creative decisions that I needed to make in order to get it to feel like I wanted it to feel. And I'm very, very grateful for that. But if I didn't have Mark and Slang acting in this thing, if I didn't have their commitment and their, Slang's been doing this stuff since I was 5 years old. He's been in television and movies. He's been in 90, 100, who knows how many things. He still has a fire in his belly. I've worked with people that had been actors since they were children, so they'd maybe been acting for like 30, 35 years. And they'd get really jaded and feel like, especially me making a lot of low budget films, I'd worked with a lot of actors that don't want to be there. They've been at the top of the mountain and they don't like rooting around at the bottom of it. But Slang wasn't like that at all. He committed to do this thing. He was a total professional. He was bringing great ideas to the table, and Mark was as well. And it was just a joy to put the camera in a place and try to capture what those guys were doing. It was a beautiful experience. And it really, really rejuvenated me after coming off a couple of movies where it didn't feel that sweet every day and that special every day. So this, for me, I hadn't really had a full meal creative experience like that since I made The Woman. So this movie is really special to me. It's just, it's special like May is special, like The Woman is special, like this little movie Roman that Angela and I made is really special. They're coming from a very personal place. The creative room is there and everybody's game and nobody's bitching about anything, even though we're a tiny movie. It was just a beautiful experience.
I'm curious if you feel this way now or not with some hindsight, but this was all going on at peak COVID. Like this is pre-vaccine and you and Joel are working on it when the production's going on, when folks were not even sure they're going to be able to make movies for a while, for an undetermined amount of time. So with that, was part of that just a catharsis that everybody got to work on something and there was some meat on the bone and you guys knew, like, I have a two-hander, minimal crew, minimal cast, this will actually work with the single room? Or when you first read the script, but Mark, I know you were wanting to work with him, but was there some aspect of it maybe that really made you go, I want to tackle this story? Or was it kind of a combo of like, I'm ready to do anything, honestly?
Number one, I know that old man. I was raised by men like that. I grew up in a rural environment like that. I know the way those people talk. I know the way they think. I'm related to them, so that was the first thing that spoke to me. And then, yes, we'd been locked down for a year at that point, and everybody was going stir crazy and everybody was terrified to interact with other people. I know we were super, super careful, me, my wife and my kids stuck in our little townhome for a freaking year, The prospect of making something and being around other people was scary because of the virus and scary because oh, fuck, what if I get sick and it shuts the thing down? And what if the actor gets this and that? But Aaron and everybody just really, really made us all feel safe. We worked in a bubble. This movie had advantages that it wouldn't have had before the pandemic because there just wasn't a lot of work going on. We wouldn't have gotten the soundstage that we got if it was non-COVID, non-pandemic time, but nobody was making anything. So we got on a fantastic soundstage at Umbra in upstate New York, in this little town called Newburgh. And we got to play with bigger toys than we would have had. We got better deals on gear. There's the cost of putting everybody up in a hotel and keeping them in a bubble and doing the COVID safety protocols and all of that kind of stuff. But all of it was really, really well run. And this was the right movie to do that with because it didn't require us moving around at all. We shot it all on the stage. It was the perfect kind of scenario and nobody got sick. Not one person got the virus the whole process of making the movie, which is a testament to just how well run the show was. It was kind of terrifying going into it just because of the pandemic stuff. But I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad that I got something done in the middle of all that stuff. And we just had a wonderful experience. And God, it was amazing to be around people and to be doing creative stuff. And yeah, we're wearing masks. My big concern going into it was I'm going to be wearing a mask. My face is one of my best tools because I'm not the most articulate person when it comes to the emotional stuff that is required to communicate to actors and crew and all that kind of stuff. I'm very expressive. I use my hands a lot. The expressions on my face are very critical to the way I communicate and project things into people. I was worried that I was going to be deprived of this, this tool that I use, my big mug. But all that went by the wayside once we started working on it, and it was just wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of the philosophy that every time you work on a movie, you take away something new with you, like a new skill you learned or a way of thinking about your art that hadn't really, came to you before. It sounds like getting the opportunity to work with someone like Stephen Lang, who is so experienced and could do those long takes, was maybe a new way to, work with actors that maybe you hadn't been accustomed to before. Were there any kind of key learnings for you or things that at this stage in your career, you really walked away with a newfound appreciation of?
Absolutely. I mean, we're shooting in one location. How do you make that location as interesting as possible for that hour and a half or 100 minutes that you have to spend in that space? We shot every inch of that set. The production designer was happy because all the hard work she did, you can actually see it all. the most interesting thing that happened in that regard, beyond just being able to like practice blocking, and like get really good at blocking actors' camera and, really concentrating on that, especially when you're doing long runs. It's all about the blocking. It's all the way about their working the set, working the props and all that kind of stuff. My DP and I sat down and prep and we're like, okay, we're going to do what we've done on the previous things we worked together and everything that I've made before. We're going to make a shot list. I'm going to draw my crappy little thumbnail sketches and we're going to draw the movie out. We're going to list out every single shot that we need. We started that process. And after about 2 days, we were like, we can't do this. We can't do it this way on this movie because we're going to put the actors in a corner to where it's like, stand here, look this direction. And, because it has to line up with this shot list I have or these storyboards that I drew. So we took the risk of not having a shot list and not having, not having that plan, which is really something that you really lean on and depend on, especially in an independent film. And we're like, look, we have Stephen Lang, who has done zillions of plays and movies and television. He knows where the camera is at. He knows how to work a set. The blocking that we're going to learn just by just taking more time to rehearse things in the morning. It's like, okay, we're going to lose an hour to rehearsal in the morning, but we're going to make all of that up later in the day because we rehearsed it. And the DP and I, we work out our shots according to what the actors are doing. I've never done that before. And it was very liberating. It was really exciting. And like I said, scary at first, but once we got into a groove with it, there was this really cool back and forth going between camera, actor, director that, made for the best movie. We weren't locked into this rigid plan. Storyboards can be good and storyboards can be bad because if you have things too specifically drawn out, you can really, really limit discovery and you can limit yourself. So that was something that taught me. I've always had the ability to think on my feet because I've had to on a lot of low budget films, but there was something very freeing about it. And the stuff I've done since, it's really informed that. I still go in with a plan and an idea of how I want something to look and feel, but it's not as rigid as it was before because I want to leave myself open. And I have more experience and I know what'll work and what won't. I can make those decisions faster than I did early in my career. So that was my biggest discovery, was just, blabbering at this point.
No, that was great. I love that combination of doing something scary, not, in terms of letting go of some of your plans, but also finding the liberation in that and truly making it more of a collaborative process. Last question in the formal part of the interview, and it's in a similar vein, is do you have any kind of general advice you would give to aspiring filmmakers? We have a lot of people that listen to this that are filmmakers or early in their careers. Is there a particular nugget of wisdom? I'm sure you have many that you think would be helpful, or you wish maybe you could tell yourself earlier on in your career.
The most important thing about making movies is that, to me, and it's the thing that gets me excited about making stuff, is that it's a collaborative art. And I think that auteur theory has done a lot of damage in that it makes young filmmakers think that it's all about them and it's all about their signature and it's all about, you do not make a movie without a great team of people and without a people that have all these myriad of skill sets, that are feeding into what you're making. This is a team sport. This is not about one person. The more you can open yourself up to that and welcome people's ideas without getting deterred from the direction that you're trying to take things, the better off you're going to be. You're going to have a better film. You're going to have a happier crew. It's all about collaboration. It's all about being able to work with people and everybody getting the most out of each other. If you're a director that is treating an editor like they're just your hands, like they know how to use that device, but I'm going to tell them every single little, cut it on this frame and do this and do that. You start to get, you get to a place with that artist, the editor, where you're getting about 10% of what they're capable of. If you open yourself up to ideas and, say, you can give them an impression. Obviously, you tell them what you're thinking and what your intent is and all that stuff. But to do that together and not just be like treating people like puppets, you're going to make a better movie, because your crew and your people that are helping you bring your, baby to life are in a way your first test audience. You know, they're the ones that should be asking you the tough questions, and you should be listening to those questions, and you should be considering those questions. And you should be, you're like a filtration device as a director. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have all the ideas. You're a filter for all of that stuff, you know, and it's your responsibility to represent not only your work, but everybody's work in the best possible light, you know? So that's my big spiel on that it's all about collaboration. It's all about working with people, you know, it's not about you.
Wise words indeed, and a running through line we've had from several guests about the collaboration aspect of it, the communication. All of it is so very important. But yeah, we thank you for all those answers. And again, Old Man, as of October 14th, in theaters, is on VOD. Check it out. This is one that Paper Street Pictures is genuinely proud of. It's not to say we're not proud of others. I'm saying, like, we do appreciate Lucky. We appreciate this experience we had with making this. Like he said, I'm glad to hear Lucky have some kind words too about it, and we take some pride in the fact that we may have rejuvenated him. So it's a good movie. It's worth checking out. Please look for Old Man, again, in theaters and wherever you rent or buy movies.
All right, now on to the rapid fire 15, which,
oh my God,
how rapid is up to you. It's not a cool test. It's like a Proust style questionnaire. It's just, there's no right or wrong answers, right? It's just, It's about you and your taste.
You can give multiple answers, as many people do.
You can give multiple, you can pass. You can say, I'll come back to that later.
Questionable taste. Yeah.
Just first thing that comes to mind. No. You are a cinephile and you are a positive force in that world. You don't fit in stuff. So this is more, we don't ask like, hey man, what do you think sucks? Like, it's more like, hey, what do you like?
Either,
So yeah, don't think too hard about it. Just first thing that comes to mind. I'll start us off here. Question 1.
Okay.
What movie do you think you've seen the most in your life?
I think I've seen the most in my life. It would have to be a Star Wars film. Probably Return of the Jedi. I mean, you got to remember when we were kids, you got one tape and you just drilled it into the ground, and Return of the Jedi was one of those for me because it was one of the few tapes I had.
Yeah, people don't understand the generation loss of sound and video quality from burning out a tape so much.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, what is the first film that really scared you and gave you nightmares?
The Wizard of Oz.
Oh wow, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, that was monkeys, and that green witch. Like, yeah, that stuff gets inside your head when you're a little kid. Definitely The Wizard of Oz.
Question 3, you may have tipped a few times in this interview, but what is your favorite horror movie franchise?
My favorite horror movie franchise. Let me think about this for 1 second. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're talking about franchise horror, it would have to be Nightmare on Elm Street. That's what created my love for horror. You know, that's what really, really got the fire burning.
It's definitely one of the most creative horror franchises out there. So it's a common answer to this question.
Yeah, the first 3 Nightmare on Elm Street films are just as good as horror was in that era. 1, 2, and 3 are just brilliant.
Well, what is your favorite horror movie subgenre?
Favorite horror movie subgenre? Disturbed women.
That
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you have guessed? Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, stuff like Carrie and Repulsion. Yeah, they go on and on. Possession. They go on and on and on. Yeah, that's my sweet spot.
How about, what is an underseen film that you love dearly and you will always find yourself recommending to people because it's either underseen, underappreciated?
Sean S. Cunningham's The New Kids.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, that is both underseen and underappreciated.
Recommendation for me and Sean, apparently.
So 80s, and so good. I think it's Sean Cunningham's best film. I think he would disagree with that, but I think it's his best film.
Sorry, I got lost in Googling the movie.
Man, pick it up. The Blu-ray is really cheap too. It has one of those VHS looking covers. Oh man, it's so fun. I love that movie. It's got Spader in it, Eric Stoltz, and it's so good.
Okay, I am definitely going to check this out.
I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I know the cover even,
and it's very 80s, which is fantastic.
All right, question 6. What is your favorite film by John Cassavetes?
There's a top 3. I just watched Woman Under the Influence last week and it just wrecked me all over again. But honestly, probably Gloria. Gloria just hit me like a ton of bricks the first time I saw it. And just that dynamic between her and the little boy is just priceless.
Yeah, again, no wrong answers, and there's multiple right answers to that question. Many of these questions. So, in a follow-up to that, who would you say is your all-time favorite director? And if you have one,
Martin Scorsese. I mean,
is Taxi Driver your favorite of his?
No, I mean, I love all of his films. You know, I think his recent film, Silence, is one of the best films. It's just a staggering movie. I just don't think anybody has ever had the command over the form and has added more to cinema than he has. I just think he's the greatest. And believe me, there's hundreds of directors I adore and love, and, you know, are really, really easy to argue against Scorsese, but he's the best because he always finds a way to make it personal, no matter what the subject is.
All right. Another favorite, your favorite artist or illustrator besides your very talented wife?
Well, yeah. Don't get me in trouble. Barry Windsor Smith.
Interesting
Definitely.
choice.
His graphic novel Monsters that came out last year did it come out last year or did it come out this year? Maybe it came out this year. Anyways, it's my favorite piece of narrative art in forever. It's just a masterpiece. He
kind of cut his teeth and got well known. I mean, I'm similar age to you, so I know Weapon X storylines back in the day.
Yeah. You should check out this new one. It's a hardcover. It's not
I
too
will have to look that up.
It's brilliant. But in terms of Old Man, the artist we pulled from the most was this painter Andrew Wyeth, one of the Brandywine artists. I mean, we literally were trying to like recreate the look and feel of his paintings in the movie, and I think we kind of pulled it off.
My senior film in college was also inspired. Andrew Wyeth was like the main inspiration as well for the look and feel. So I can relate.
Oh man. Yeah. His stuff just cuts me to the bone. It's amazing.
Keeping in that medium of comics, what is your all-time favorite comic book storyline, arc, run, collection, graphic novel?
Oh, my favorite. The Hobgoblin. I mean, if you want me to be totally honest, the thing I was most excited about when I was a kid was the whole Hobgoblin thing that went down in the 80s, you know, the introduction of the Hobgoblin and in issue 238, and then leading all the way up till, God, I can't remember when it was revealed who he actually was, like 50 issues later or something like that. That whole run, I was just like so into it when I was a kid. Really, really loved that whole run of Spider-Man comics in the 80s.
Yeah, that whole saga is good. And I do have a trade paperback of that somewhere in my collection.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
It's switching gears into music. Do you have a favorite concert that you've attended or like a very memorable concert moment?
Yeah, the first time I saw Nirvana. I saw Nirvana when I was 16 years old, 16 or 7, I think. Yeah, maybe I was 17 by that point. Yeah, me and this friend of mine, we drove up to Oakland and saw Nirvana and the Breeders, L7, and this hip hop group called the Disposable Heroes of Hip Hoprisy. And that was just like a religious experience for me. Nirvana is my favorite band.
Oh man, I bet, because that was obviously they had a very short peak, so you were hitting it right when they were hitting it. It was changing
special.
those zeitgeist.
It was early in that same year that, you know, it was before In Utero came out, and they, you know, I got to hear all of those songs for the first time, just standing like 10 feet from Cobain and Novoselic and Grohl. That was really, really special. Really special.
Nice. Another music one. What would be Lucky McKee's walkout music? So say you're coming out to talk for a TED Talk or introducing a movie at Fantastic Fest, or maybe you're coming out to box or fight. What are you entering to? What's the pump up music?
Such a weird, specific question. That's a tough one. I'm obviously instantly going to Nirvana in my head because I was just talking them up. Yeah, I guess Milk It by Nirvana.
Good choice.
Good answer. Yeah.
All right. Now we're on to food. What is your favorite local spot to eat at in El Paso?
My favorite subject, Lucy's Cafe West. It's a little mom and pop Mexican place. And this guy, David, that runs it, is just a wonderful person and always takes really good care of me and my family, and the best chilaquiles you can get in town.
Now I'm hungry.
Yeah. Oh man, place is great.
Food makes us emotional. Similarly, this next question, what song, film, piece of pop culture always manages to make you emotional or even bring you to tears?
Sling Blade. Movie Sling Blade wrecks me every time I watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to make me cry? Put Sling Blade on in front of me. Movie just hits me really, really hard. And the reason for that isn't because of the dark stuff that happens in the film, but it's the kindness on display between people. It's just so beautiful and so powerful.
It's definitely a movie that has stuck with. I saw it when I was fairly young. like it's kind of seared into my memory. And I think most of it really is the emotional response to it that is seared in my memory, not even the content as much.
It's like a lost Steinbeck novel, it's just a perfect movie. I mean, you get asked when you're a filmmaker, you get asked all the time, what's your favorite movie of all time? I don't have a favorite movie of all time. I mean, obviously there's hundreds, thousands, but Sling Blade is usually my go-to answer just because, there's just nothing wrong with that movie at all. It's just a perfect film and perfect for me. There's certain movies you watch, you feel like they were made just for you. And that's one of them. Nice.
All right. This next question may be a challenging one. If you could have the answer to one unknown question in the universe, what would it be? Like, is there a God? What's the meaning of life? What day you're going to die? Who killed JFK? Is there one question that really haunts you that you're intellectually curious about that you would want to know?
I guess the biggest question would be, is there a point to any of this?
The age-old meaning of life.
Maybe.
We all just got real introspective thinking about it. Well, we'll end on let's phrase it as what we want the meaning of life to be. The final question in this Rapid Fire 15 is, what would be Lucky McKee's dream project to make? Is there a genre, a period, a historical figure, a style of film you'd really love to tackle?
I've written it, and I'm hoping to make it within the next year or two. It's just a personal little story about where I grew up and how I grew up and the type of people I grew up around. That means everything to me. I mean, once I make that movie, everything else I do will be bonus.
Love it. I hope it happens.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I try not to be overly precious about things, but that one I'm very, very precious about. It's got to be just the right scenario,
I think it's okay to be precious about your personal projects. So
Yep. And that concludes the Rapid Fire 15. You aced it, even though there's no points and no score.
Nothing really matters.
We appreciate the answers. And apparently nothing really matters because Lucky's still looking for the meaning of it all.
What's the fucking point? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The point is to get folks to check out Old Man, either on VOD or in theaters if it's nearby them.
You will find all your answers by watching Old Man. Yeah.
You will find the answer if you were ever unsure about how good Stephen Lang is. He can.
Yeah, and Mark Center too.
Mark as well. Yeah, not to put
this movie is definitely the Stephen Lang show in a lot of regards, but this movie would not work if Mark wasn't as incredible as he is in the film. And I really hope that people see how special what Mark does in this film is. It is an utterly unique performance. And it was just a joy to behold. So there's two guys in the movie, and I hope that both are recognized. I don't think Slang will have a problem, but Mark is really, really special in the thing too.
No, we're fans of Mark as well.
Yeah.
So is there anything, projects upcoming we should keep an eye out for, anything announced that you're able to talk about or no? I know a lot of stuff's still under wraps.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the personal thing yet. I told you enough. I got to direct an episode of a television show this summer. I'm really excited about. I can't say what it is yet, but everybody will know about it because it's going to have a lot of eyeballs on it. I'm really, really excited about that. I had a fucking blast doing it. And it was so fun to work in television. Totally different mental game than making features, but I really, really took to it, and just everybody's really thrilled with the results, and that'll be showing up sometime in January or February.
We're very excited about that. But
I just don't know if it's appropriate to say.
No, it's not public.
I haven't seen anybody else talk about it, so I'm just kind of keeping my mouth shut until other people start blabbing about it. But yeah, I got to do a TV show, and it was really, really fun. So I hope it leads to more TV work because I got hooked on it.
And folks can visit paperstreetpodcast.com. We'll have some show notes there that include links to find you on social media if you don't mind them looking you up. And
that'd be great. Yeah,
links to Old Man as well.
Twitter is the best place to find me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lucky. I know you have a busy schedule coming up here, so happy that we could make this work, and learned a lot about your life. I didn't know much about you heading into this, and I feel like I learned a lot, and also some really great advice along the way. So thank you so much. Excited to check out Old Man.
Yeah, Friday, October 14th. So I'm very, very excited about it. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and I'm glad we had just like a normal talk.
No, definitely.
It was good.
Podcasters, they're just like us.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
No, again, we appreciate the time and all the answers you gave us. And again, Old Man, as of October 14th, please look for it in theaters or on VOD. And again, thank you, Lucky.
Yes.
All right. Take care.
Okay.